Joining us tonight is Patrick Hynes. He's a candidate for Cook County Assessor in the March election. Patrick spent years working inside the Cook County Assessor's office, later serving as Assessor of Lyons Township. And he comes from a long connected family to public service in Cook County government. Outside of politics, he's also a volunteer firefighter in Western Springs. At a time when property taxes are one of the biggest concerns facing homeowners across Cook County, we're going to talk about what the assessor actually does, why so many people are frustrated with the current system, and why Patrick believes a different kind of leadership is needed in this office. Patrick Hynes, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we really begin, let me commend you on your hairstyle of choice. Wow. We share something in common right off the bat.
Always ready to go. My hair's always straight.
That's right. So is mine. You didn't inherit a name, but you inherited first-hand exposure to how this system works. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. You're a St. Cajetan's parish guy. You grew up in Beverly. Your uncle was Tom Hynes, who was in the assessor's office for a number of years.
Yes. So I grew up on the south side in Beverly, St. Cajetan's graduate. My father was a Chicago fireman. My mother, a Chicago public school teacher. Public service was certainly part of our lives.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being from the south side, growing up, a great place to be.
Sure.
Great years. And
Southside Irish all the way.
That's right.
How do you think your mom and dad's experience in public service helped shape how you think about public service today?
Well, when you raise your hand and say you're going to do a job, it's important then that's your vocation. That's what you're dedicated to. You got to remember the mission and what you're there for. So, my father certainly applied himself to his years of service in the fire service, and my mother the same in her years as a speech pathologist in the Chicago public school system. So it was certainly modeling about what service is about,
right?
And whatever your role is, that's your vocation, and you do it to the best of your ability.
Sure. Now, your Uncle Tom was well known in the Democratic machine here, especially in the 19th Ward in the Irish Democratic machine. Mm-hmm. And then your dad's a fireman.
Correct. Yeah.
So you're probably thinking to yourself, what do I want to do here when I grow up? You went to Brother Rice High School, and then you went to DePaul.
Yep.
Were you thinking, I'm going to be a fireman like my dad?
That is exactly what I thought. Yeah.
Were you? Yeah.
Yeah. So in the summertime when we were off from school, and this was the 80s, I doubt they let kids do this anymore, but I got to spend the night overnight at the firehouse.
Yeah.
And so, if they caught a run, they'd throw me in the back of the engine. I'd get to go where they were going.
Cool.
I remember they had a small trash fire. They let me pull a line and put out the fire. And,
yeah. So you drank the Kool-Aid early then?
Yeah, well, sure. Every kid's dream. I mean, imagine being 11, 12 years old. You're riding in the back of the big red truck.
Yeah.
It was exciting. And so certainly my goal was to be a Chicago fireman. I started working at a real estate appraisal firm. The Chicago Fire Department doesn't have their exam very often.
Yeah.
And so when they finally had their exam, I signed up, was going to go take it. I believe it was held at the United Center. And my car broke down on the Dan Ryan the day of the exam.
Wow.
So instead of getting an opportunity to try and
go for it.
It was a little rough. I wasn't able to make the exam. Don't make the exam, you don't get
There's no makeups.
Test. No, there is not.
No.
And so, the other thing that my father did on his days off in the fire department is he did rehab apartment buildings. And so,
okay,
as his oldest, I was voluntold that I'd be helping him with the maintenance of those buildings.
Yeah.
So, real estate was another passion that I had. I was working at the real estate appraisal place.
Sure.
And so, I ended up staying in the real estate. Much later in life, when we moved to the suburbs, the community that we moved to had a volunteer fire department, and I got to express my desire to become a fireman. Cool. And I joined the Western Springs Fire Department.
You spent some years inside the Cook County's assessor's office. How many years exactly?
About 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was before being elected in the township of Lyons.
Correct.
What'd you learn from the inside that most people really never see?
Well, it's a bureaucratic office. You're determining the value of 1.8 million, 1.9 million parcels. There's a method to the madness.
Sure.
After 2+ decades, it seems fairly straightforward to me. I know that it's kind of a complicated system, but ultimately you have to assign a value to every parcel that's in the district so that we can get a fair and equitable distribution of our large property tax burden here in this county.
Mm-hmm. At what point, in your discovery of your role in the assessor's office, did you realize the power of the position and how consequential and misunderstood that the office really can be for people?
Early on. So I spent a lot of time assessing things in the field on the front lawns of folks' houses. So.
And that's the front lines of the office, really.
Correct, yeah. So I've been in every community in this county from the top to the bottom, from the east to the west. And early on, about a year and a half, 2 years in, I had some experiences with taxpayers where, folks who were raising their children in a community were getting taxed out. And so I remember a taxpayer whose husband had just died. They were recently widowed, and they had little kids, and it was a very emotional conversation where,
she couldn't afford to live in the
she couldn't afford to continue
anymore.
to stay and raise the children there. And so it was kind of that conversation and thousands of them like it, where you realize that the work that we do impacts the most emotional asset that anyone will ever own,
Sure,
their home.
Yeah, and a lot of these families are legacy families that have been in the neighborhood for years and decades and decades.
Correct.
Right.
And so when we get our work wrong, we can do real harm to folks. And so those conversations, those incidents really drove my passion for learning the vocation, being as good at this as I can be, because if you get it wrong, you do real harm. And the flip side is also true. If you get it right, if you're able to resolve problems, it's really rewarding. You can really provide a path where people can stay in their home.
Right. Let's just educate our listeners a little bit about, how the office sort of quietly decides who pays more and who doesn't, and how those decisions come to light and to be.
Well, the burden is roughly a little over $9 billion in the city, a little over $9 billion in the suburbs. And so basically, the county assessor's job is to divvy up that burden to all the parcels that are in the city of Chicago and all the parcels that are in the suburbs. So you pay a property tax burden, your share of that $9+ billion bill, based on the value of your property versus the value of all the property in the district.
And who's deciding what that burden is? Our governor?
No, the state actually doesn't get any of the property tax money. It's all local. So in the suburbs, 85% of the taxes paid by a suburban parcel are spent within 5 miles of that parcel.
Okay.
So the overwhelming majority of the tax dollars, property tax dollars, goes to K through 12 education.
Okay.
So if you think about where you have to live to send a kid to the local grade school, there's a map that's involved there.
Right.
And that same map is the properties that have to pay to support that local grade school. Same with the high school. There's a map where you have to live in order to go to the high school. That's the same map used for the real estate to support the price of paying for that high school.
Many people think that the assessor sets taxes, and that's not exactly right.
Yeah, we simply divvy the burden. So one of the classes that I was in, I take a lot of continuing education with assessors across the nation, and one guy described it, I thought, very well. It would be as if you all went out to dinner and you hired me to divvy up the bill. Okay. And so if one guy was on the wagon and he just had a salad and a water, and then another guy had 8 glasses of wine and a steak and dessert, obviously the one with the glasses of wine and the steak should bear a little bit more of the dinner tab, and the one who only had a salad and a water should get a lighter burden.
Unless they're playing credit card roulette.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Which is not a fun game to play.
Only if you lose.
So what happens when assessments are inaccurate and often unpredictable?
Well, when they're inaccurate and unpredictable, that's when you do real harm, and that's what we have right now.
Yeah.
So if you've been following the news, this current assessment that we have, the south side and the west side communities have received a doubling of their assessment, a tripling of their assessment. Mm-hmm. And so their burden has jumped significantly, and they weren't expecting it. It's thousands of dollars extra that they have to pay, and the county gives them 30 days to pay it. Mm-hmm. And so you'll find that when the treasurer's office finally releases their collection rates, that you'll find that in those communities where the spike had happened, that a good portion of them are not going to have made the payment. Mm-hmm. And they'll be on the road to property tax foreclosure.
Right.
The exact same thing happened 1 year ago in the Southland.
Yeah.
So if you read the news about a year ago, there was a spike in residential assessments in the Southland between I-57 and the Indiana border, where residential property tax burdens doubled overnight.
Largely black and brown neighborhoods as well, again.
This is true. Mm-hmm. And last year, when that happened, some communities have 30% delinquency rates, 40% delinquency rates. I think Harvey's collection rate was probably 53%. Mm-hmm. And so you have all these homeowners who are now on the road to property tax foreclosure, Some of them will scrape together the money to get off the road, but there's a good portion that will not. They will flat out lose their homes eventually when the tax sale comes.
Right.
And those communities will have lost a good neighbor. They're going to find that they have a vacated home in the community, which ends up being an albatross in the neighborhood. It's not right.
What happens to those people? Who comes in and buys their properties when it gets foreclosed on?
So,
and it's usually senior citizens and fixed income middle class people that are getting pushed out and that lose the. Are private equity groups coming in and grabbing those properties and then charging big high rents?
Usually the tax sale, the first round, the tax buyers are trying to get interest rate payment. So the first round of buyers, most of those buyers don't actually want to take possession of the property.
Okay.
They're buying to get an interest rate return, and they're hoping that the taxpayer redeems those taxes, and then they'll get
a little bit of
interest. You're right.
Right.
And then those that don't go through the first round, they'll fall into the scavenger sale. Those are straight up just selling the property.
Right.
And so there's different groups of investors that'll make that investment. Some will never be purchased at all, and they'll end up in the county's land bank. And so last year there was a huge spike in the burden, or 2 years ago there was a huge spike in the burden in Park Forest. Park Forest, I believe, is the highest number of land bank owned properties because the tax burden is so high. A lot of those properties really they just don't make any economic sense to own them.
Right.
And then they end up in the land bank. So then the land bank has to try and find a way to get it back on the tax rolls, to get them habitable again, and find a path to put some people back in those houses. So if you get it wrong, and you get the assessment wrong, we have the ability to do real harm. I've always known that the county assessor's office has had an outside influence on our economy. It's a shame that we had to have an assessor who's done such a poor job to really prove that to everyone.
Explain what the outside influence on the economy really is.
So it's a $19 billion annual burden, and it influences whether or not you can have construction starts. Right now there's very few cranes in the sky over the city of Chicago. There's more cranes in the sky over Ann Arbor, Michigan,
not a lot
Madison,
of building
Wisconsin.
happening.
Right, and so a good portion of the reason for that is the unpredictability and the wild swings in our property tax burden. So if you're going to invest, if you're going to build a multi-story residential high-rise, one of the first things you're going to want to figure out when you do your pro forma is what's my future tax burden going to be.
Right.
And those that have come before you will tell you, look, I predicted my tax burden would be X, and then I finally, after 2 years of construction, brought the building to market, and it turns out my property tax burden was 2X. Now the underwriting for my loan, I may or may not be able to make my loan. Obviously, my profit margin is much different than what I thought it would.
Right.
And as a result, we've chased a lot of the investment in this county away. One of our biggest experts.
And potential labor.
Right, labor.
All the union guys that could be hired and working on those buildings, they don't have any work.
And that's recognized by labor. We were endorsed at the CFL. We have the overwhelming majority of the trade unions with us.
Right.
And they recognize that we need an economic environment where we can build, where everyone can benefit. And if you're not building, then it's very difficult to get to work. So one of the number one goals of any trade union is to make sure their members are working.
Right.
And you can't work if you can't have investment in the county.
I mean, if you could pinpoint it right now, why are people so upset right now?
It's the volatility. They're really frustrated. So, you own your home, you're expecting a certain amount of burden, they're high as it is, and then out of nowhere, you get this crushing assessment that spikes your property tax burden, and now you have a new normal where you have to come up with thousands of extra dollars in 30 days, and that's your new normal that you have to come up with next year and the year after that. I have a taxpayer that I met in the Southland. She's in her 30s. She had bought a house. Maybe she was in year 3 or 4 of home ownership, and her tax burden spiked last year. And so the mortgage company recalculated her escrow payment, and she has to come up with $750 extra per month.
Are these disproportionately people who took advantage, who may have had money that took advantage of the low rates in COVID, and then all of a sudden had to change?
No, that's a completely separate issue. They have the standard interest rate that anyone else would have. But when you purchase a home, your monthly payment is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
Right.
The principal and interest is your negotiated loan. and then taxes and insurance, your mortgage company makes you set them aside because those are the only two ways that they can lose on their mortgage.
Right.
We have first position as a government to come and foreclose the house. We can step right in front of the mortgage company, take possession of the house, and they're out of luck. So that's why they escrow tax payments, so that they don't lose their first position, so that they have equity to catch back their payment.
What are you hearing directly from the homeowners across Cook County?
Abject frustration. You know, that they can't plan for what's coming in the future, and they don't have any faith that the numbers that they're receiving from the county assessor's office actually represent their fair and equitable distribution of the burden. And for good reason. If you take a good look at the data used to produce the assessment in this county, it's pure garbage. One of the games that I like to play, I take a lot of classes with assessors across the nation. And one of the games I like to take in the break is I'll ask an assessor from Miami or an assessor from Tennessee or Arizona. I said, "Do you have a property record card and a sketch for every parcel that you assess in your district?" And they'll say, "Well, of course, I have records and sketches for all the parcels."
Right.
We don't have that in Cook County.
Okay.
I FOIA the sketches all the time. I get back about 60% of them.
Okay.
And if you take a really good look,
Where are they?
that's a great question. We should have a record card. We should have good, accurate data for every parcel that we assess. So if you take a good look, a random sample, around here of 100 houses, and see what the data says for the county assessor is using to produce the assessment, and then walk the area and take a look at the actual built environment, a lot of them won't match.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And so, if you have, no matter what your modeling is for assessing, if you put in garbage data, it's simply going to spit out garbage answers. So right now we're having a difficult time producing a credible result in our assessments that taxpayers can have confidence in.
How much does artificial intelligence play into finding new sketches and cameras taking pictures and aggregating? And
Yeah, well, it helps. When I began my career in the early 90s, the data that I collected, I used to call the principals of transactions, either, a broker, a seller, a buyer. I called them on a phone that was wired into the wall.
Yeah.
Now, today, the amount of information that's available is infinitely more robust. The county pays for aerial photographs that they do every 3 months. There's Google Earth. There's the realtors, the listings. They're all online. The amount of information that you can get is really an embarrassment of riches. So, some of that AI can bear fruit to do some scraping and find some photographs and identify which ones you're missing. But really, we're at the point where we still need the human capital to go out and do the work to investigate what's in our built environment to make sure that we have
incredibly
good,
refreshing to hear.
Clean data.
I can't tell you how refreshing that is to hear.
It can supplement our effort, but we still need the humans.
Yeah, we do. There's reporting showing larger swings in assessments year to year. Is that a sign of reform or instability in the office?
Well, certainly that's a sign of instability. The law is that the assessment should match the actions of the market. I mean, even in a hot market, we don't experiencing doubling of value in 3 years or tripling of value in 3 years. So, if you did not enjoy a doubling of the value of your property in the last 3 years, then you shouldn't have to suffer a doubling of your assessment in 3 years. That's not the way our laws are written. That's not the way the system is supposed to work. So there's something wrong if these spikes don't match the actions of the market. And, the studies that I'm doing and looking at the data, if you look at the 3 years of sales before the 2020 assessment in the Southland and the 3 years of sales before the 23 assessment in the Southland, they did experience appreciation, but the sales data will show that maybe certain communities went up, 35 or 40%, but then the assessment went up 80% or 90%. In Lyons Township, one of the poorest communities that I have is Summit. The data shows that their appreciation in value went up about 38%. I believe the assessment was up 60 or 70%. It's not matching these trends.
So it's keeping homeowners in the poorhouse, essentially, still.
And shocking the system.
Yeah.
So it's that unpredictability where you can't predict what's coming down the road, and then all of a sudden you get this bill that you're not expecting, and you have 30 days to pay it, and you're behind the 8 ball, and you're always behind because the next bill's coming twice a year, every year, for the rest of the time you own that property.
Now, obviously, the incumbent and yourself are from the same party.
We are.
Was it hard for you to say, this guy's not doing it right. We got to fix this, and why?
No, it wasn't hard for me to say because this is my vocation. This work means something to me. Just like I told you earlier, these taxpayers
Yep.
When you have these experiences, that it becomes a part of you. Unless you're heartless, you know that you're doing harm. So in Lyons Township, I left the county assessor's office for a reason. I worked for Assessor Kagi for 3 years.
Right.
I was very dissatisfied with what was happening there, the harm that was being done to taxpayers. I left 6 years short of my pension eligibility date and took a $30,000 pay cut to move to the Lyons Township,
Right.
So that I could advocate for the taxpayers in my corner of Cook County, so I could, do my vocation in a way that was satisfying to me.
Right.
And for the first few years, I had an awfully good time doing it. I returned $14 million to my local taxpayers in the first 3 years.
Wow.
I audited the data that was used to produce the assessment. I discovered that there were several properties, new construction properties, that were never added to the tax rolls. I added 30-plus properties, luxury single-family homes, one office building that was missing,
Right.
that the county assessor refused to put on the tax rolls. I went to the Board of Review and had them put on at the last minute, the first township assessor to ever do that in the county system. And for my efforts, I was just recently awarded the most outstanding performance for a large assessment jurisdiction by the Illinois Property Assessment Institute, the one that the institute that licenses all the assessors in the state.
Craigie ran on reform.
He did.
From your perspective, what's worked and what hasn't?
Boy, that's a tough question. There's not too much that is working. We both agree that it's an important office, that it has a big influence on people's lives. But the measure of any assessor is that when you received the office and then you turn it over to the next assessor, did you turn it over in better shape than you had received it?
Yeah.
And if Assessor Kagi, his career ends in this March 17th election,
Yes.
and he hands that office over to me, he's handing me a hot mess.
He is.
He won't be able to say that he handed off the office to the next assessor in better shape than he received it. And so, the primary duty of any assessor, the thing you learn in Assessment 101 on day one in the first class you take, is that the duty of any assessor is to discover, list, and value all the property that's in the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And that's not happening right now. Right
Yep.
now, if you think about how many times hammers are swinging or shovels go in the ground in this county, it's the duty of the assessor to capture that new value. When they build a new house down the street, it's supposed to be added to the tax rolls so that it pays taxes. When they build a restaurant down the street, it's supposed to be added to the tax rolls so it pays taxes.
Right.
A lot of those properties are missing. The Tribune did a report in August of 24 investigating all these properties that were never added to the tax rolls. They came up with $444 million of missing value. And in their report, they said, we kept finding them over and over again. We just got tired of looking.
Right.
They were everywhere, and that's a very frustrating thing for someone who does this professionally.
Well, how do you solve it? Do you hire more guys in the assessor's office and get more boots on the ground? And
Yeah,
go?
there will definitely need to be more boots on the ground. When I started at the county assessor's office in '98, there were 50 plus people on the residential side. Doing this work in the built environment, adding property to the tax rolls, making sure that our data was clean.
In the field.
In the field. At its nadir, Assessor Kagi had 8 people in the field.
Okay.
8
well,
people cannot maintain data.
There's your answer.
Yeah, so 8 people cannot maintain data on 1.5
Sure.
million residential properties, and it shows. So as an example, even the Pope's house is assessed wrong.
Yeah.
The Pope's house is a story-and-a-half house in Dalton, the modest home.
Right.
But the records for the county assessor show that it's just a one-story, 700-square-foot house. It's actually a 1.5-story house. The second-floor bedrooms aren't assessed.
Do you think the current system's easier for the average homeowner to understand than it's been in the past?
It's talking to taxpayers. I would say they're equally as confused about it.
I suppose that's because it's generational in buying homes, right? You're consistently teaching a
starting
new
over
wave of
again.
people.
Yeah, that is a problem.
Do you think the office today is more focused on theory or on practical consequences?
I wondered, is the office more concerned with ideology than the boring nitty-gritty of doing the assessment?
It seems like it is.
Yeah. So, it's a pretty straightforward job. There's a $9 billion burden in Chicago, a $9+ billion burden in the suburbs, and your job is to fairly and equitably divide that burden using property value. It's find the right value, assess all the properties, divvy up the burden.
So what you're saying is essentially there's too much emphasis on distributing burden and not enough emphasis on accuracy and boots on the ground.
Fairness, of course.
And so that will solve the problem.
Yes,
well, at least
you need to have
portion of it.
professionalism in the office,
Right.
and a commitment to doing the work. Roll up your sleeves, get the work done, get it in a way that the taxpayers can have confidence that the number that they receive when they open their bill represents a fair and equitable distribution of the tax burden for them. They need to have confidence that they're paying their fair share, that their neighbors paying their fair share, and they also need stable taxes. If they're not enjoying wild swings in the value of their property, they should not have to suffer wild swings in the resultant property tax burden.
Do you think that homeowners have more of the burden now than commercial properties do?
Well, that's been a trend that's been going on for a while. Roughly it's 50-50. Always the county tries to make sure that the burden falls a little more to commercial properties. The makeup of this county in the 50s, 60s, and 70s was a lot more industrial. We built a lot more things than we used to. Now we've moved more to a service economy.
Yeah.
So a lot of that commercial environment, it's changed.
Right.
And we've moved the rubric to try and keep the commercial properties paying more than the residential properties. So when my career started in the 90s, the tax rates for commercial industrial, for residential, they were 16%, 36%, 38%. The spread between residential and industrial commercial was 2 3/8 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the middle part of my career, we switched it to the 10 and 25, where we changed the rates that we did it so that we could keep commercial paying more than 50%, residential paying less than 50%.
At what moment did you feel that the current direction that the current administration's in was unsustainable, that you had to step in?
Yeah, right around year 3, around the time that I left in frustration.
Okay.
There were meetings that I would be in where I'd raise my hand and say, look, hey, this is against the law. We can't be doing this. Or there would be times in meetings where I would raise my hand and say, this is against assessment best practices. You're going to have some unintended consequences here.
Right.
And it was frustrating. You couldn't get
Let
any
me just-
satisfaction. Sure.
What does a competent assessor prioritize first amongst all things?
First, clean data.
Okay.
If you can't describe it, if you don't have an idea of what the built environment is that you're assessing, you can't possibly produce a credible assessment. So number one is you have to have a good handle on what the built environment in this county looks like.
Right.
You have to have clear, accurate data if you're going to produce a credible assessment that you can defend.
Right.
And so number one is going to be cleaning up the data. And then number two is going to be restoring trust and sort of undoing a lot of the harm that's been done in the last 8 years. So right now, we talked earlier that there's no cranes in the sky. There's not as much construction activity. Mm-hmm. And so you have to encourage people to invest in this county.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm very excited about is that we're going to have a public-facing Office of Economic Development.
Okay.
One of the biggest complaints that you'll get from those that invest in this county is that unpredictability. If I'm going to spend $10 or $20 million on this project, I need to underwrite my loan. I need to figure out what my pro forma is going to be, what the numbers look like. And if I have to guess what the property tax burden is going to be,
it won't get underwritten anyway.
And it won't get underwritten. So if you know you're going to build a 100,000 square foot warehouse, or you're going to build a multi-story mixed-use building, there is no reason that the county assessor's office can't model that for you, score it, tell you exactly what assessments we'll come up with.
What about the current comms teams and having a dialogue with the people of Illinois and keeping them updated on the practices that are happening and enhancements that are going down inside the office? Do you think that needs improvement as well?
Oh, certainly. You have to have a communication with the taxpayers. I mean, number one, you have to restore trust and confidence in the system.
Well, the big thing is it's a surprise. It's a surprise.
Right.
It shouldn't be a surprise.
No, it should not be a surprise.
It should be a slow,
steady
pat on the back and say, here's what's happening. Here's why it's happening.
I like to say we're going to make the county assessor's office boring.
Okay.
We will no longer be front and center in your life. You will not have to go to the mailbox and say a little prayer before you open up the property tax bill.
When's the election? March 17th?
On March 17th. Vote for Patrick on St. Patrick's Day.
Let me ask you a little bit about your work as a volunteer firefighter.
Okay.
Obviously, you still had the bug.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of calls?
No, I moved to Western Springs. It's
okay.
That's why everybody goes there. Nothing really exciting happens. We probably get 3 fires a year.
Yeah.
Although there've been a lot lately because it's so cold. The last drill I was at was, we'll see. Maybe we'll catch one. But
How often do your friends and family call you griping about their own personal tax bills and want to know how they can remedy it? And
I'll
what
get a couple of
steps they
calls
can
for
take?
advice. Sure. I mean, that's the primary role as the Lyons Township Assessor. I have 45,000 taxpayers. And so everyone in my community knows that I'm a property tax person, very knowledgeable. So, but I enjoy that,
Right.
That's fun. You can find a problem, investigate it, and give them a path, or at least understand it. I'm not always a ray of sunshine. Sometimes the explanation they don't like, but at least they understand it.
Right. How do you protect the guys in the field that work for the assessor's office from physical backlash? Like, people don't like their homes being photographed. They don't like people coming walking in their yards, and they want to know what's going on.
Yeah,
and I know that the assessor's office doesn't always give homeowners the heads up that someone's coming to take a look.
You just have to be polite and understand. People, I think, in general, understand that there is a tax system. The decades that I did that job, I usually didn't have too many problems. I mean, sure, there would be a few folks who were irate, but a silver tongue and kindness and being polite usually got the job done.
Right.
It's not as bad as you would think. And in many ways, it's a really rewarding experience, because you get to go into communities and parts of the city and the county that you would not otherwise go. You get to meet people that you would not have otherwise met. On the whole, it's a pretty great experience.
What's the most rewarding part of the job?
Helping someone stay in their home.
Yeah.
I've had thousands of taxpayers who are desperate and stressed, and then you're able to find errors or find relief for them, and then they're able to stay in their home or give them some advice that they can keep their real estate, keep their family together in the place that they hoped to raise their family.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. I mean, there's nothing better than that. And as the Lyons Township Assessor, because we get to advocate for the taxpayers, we get taxpayers that come back all the time with a lot of gratitude. It's a wonder I don't have diabetes with some of the the chocolates, the donuts. Thank you so much for the thousands of dollars in relief that you were able to grant and find a way to keep us in the house and correct the errors that are coming out of the county assessor's office. But part of the reason that I decided to run was that with all the errors and all the corrections and the $14 million that we gave back, there still were some that we weren't able to get corrected. There's 60 some taxpayers that I have that are owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. We were able to show exactly where the county had made their errors, and the county assessor is unable or unwilling to provide relief for them. And that's very aggravating. I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
In my community, there was a fire, and I actually happened to be on the fire. I pulled a line and washed down the extension. That house ended up not really being inhabitable again.
Total loss.
So they filed an appeal, letting the assessor know that the property was burned out. The county assessor rejected that appeal, just taxed them as if the house was still occupied. Ultimately, the insurance company settled. They demolished the house. The county assessor still assessed it as the house was there and occupied, even though it was a vacant lot. And then they used the insurance proceeds to build a new house.
Yeah, that's normal.
So the taxpayer was charged for a house that had burned down and had been removed from the face of the earth, all the way through for a few years until December 31st. And then the county assessor assessed the brand new house on January 1st, as if the sun had set one year.
Yeah.
And then when the sun rose the next year, the old house disappeared, the new one suddenly appeared.
Oh, now they see it.
Yeah, and so that's not the way the law is written.
No.
That taxpayer is owed tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
We've gotten the county assessor to admit their error. They were a little salty about it.
Sure.
And they owe that taxpayer, but they're unable to figure out how to process their certificate of error and how to give that taxpayer back their money.
Oh, okay.
And so I have 50 or 60 of those. I have a senior who had a small business, sold their small business. The county lost their certificate of error, and so they have $50,000 of the proceeds from the sale of their real estate and business.
Right.
That's being held in escrow until the county issues their certificate of error and refund check. And it's been 3 years now.
3 years.
And so they keep coming back. Hey, can I move on with my life? I'd like to take the $50,000 and put it in my retire account and move on.
$50,000 can be life or death for some people.
Sure. I have a 30-something small business owner who's got a banquet hall, and the county has cheated them out of $100,000. It admitted their error, did a certificate of error, but then forgot to certify the certificate of error. And so now the $60,000 refund for the 1 year is not going to be issued, and the $40,000 for the next year is not going to be issued.
Right.
It's very difficult to run a small business if the county comes and takes $100,000 away from you.
For sure it is.
Yeah. And especially when they promise that they'll give you the money back and then renege on it. That makes it very difficult to plan. It's those kind of things that are incredibly frustrating.
Yep.
And, you don't forget the victims of these things. You know that you're advocating for them, and it just gets so frustrating that it's... In some ways, I didn't move far enough away from Assessor Kagi by leaving the county assessor's office, going to the township. He still looms large.
Right.
He's still an obstacle to my attempts to get justice for my taxpayers.
Yes.
And so really, it got so frustrating that the only answer is to remove the obstacle from the third floor of the county building.
Yep.
And replace him with a competent assessor who's going to advocate for the taxpayers.
Good for you. You had no choice, really. I mean, who else was going to do it?
And I'm ready to serve. So, this is my vocation. This is the work that needs to be done. I'm passionate about it.
Yep.
And let's get after it.
Was there a moment in your career where all of a sudden you sat to yourself and kind of exhaled and said, this is why I do this? I'm glad I'm here.
Oh, sure. When you get a senior or someone who's like emotional and they're very scared and they're nervous, and then you just start looking at their case and you figure out where the county went wrong, and to me, it's just like, relax. This was a mistake. We'll get it corrected. And then you do get it corrected, and then you're able to call them on the phone and say, okay, we got an adjusted bill for you. Here's your new normal. And they're so grateful that keeps you going. It keeps you wanting to make sure that we get the assessment right.
If you get a bill and you're, and it's doubled or what it was the year before, and you're in absolute panic mode, and you're in that position, what's the most appropriate and best step to take with trying to solve the issue? Rather, obviously tempers are going to flare. People are going to flip out. If you're giving advice to someone who's in that position right now, what's the best route for them?
Well, if you're a suburban taxpayer, I would recommend going to your township assessor's office, because they are your taxpayer advocate.
Okay.
And it's free, and
Right.
you can go get some professional advice on your situation.
Right.
If we had a functional county assessor where you didn't have to go through teleprompt hell and sit on the phone for an hour,
Yep.
you in the past you would be able to call the county assessor and figure out where the error was or state your case. But by the time the bill arrives, a lot of times it's too late. And so if it's not a property description error or some kind of regular error, if it's just a valuation, sometimes it's too late. You have to pay that and then file an appeal and get it corrected going forward. So if you're not paying attention to it, sometimes there's folks that are victimized by those spikes, and for 1 year or 2 years until they figure out a relief or get the county to come off of their error, they're out of luck.
Yeah. Do you think the current state of the administration may have fallen victim to it overtly heavily reliant on software programs and AI things and bots and stuff like that, and they say, well, the data shows us we should use this software and this is but there are certain professions where there's large margins for computer error. This is one of them, I think.
Yeah, I think they're mostly victims of hubris.
Yeah.
Not being willing to have enough conversations to listen to people. That they're always confident that what they have is like came down from stone tablets from heaven, and can't be questioned by anyone. But that's not the way our system works.
Right.
And so we're supposed to follow the market. These assessments are supposed to move slowly, matching the market,
Right.
and sort of a regular pattern that's fairly boring. And you should have an equal opportunity to show the assessor your information, your data, if you disagree with the number, and you should have a clear path to get justice.
Also, we haven't touched on this because we're near the end, but I want to ask you, a lot of people rent here in Chicago.
They do.
Rent's expensive.
Yes, and you know why?
Why?
We don't have enough supply in our market.
That's right.
Why don't we have enough housing supply? We chase away folks who do the building.
Thank you.
We make it toxic to supply our market with residential housing.
Right.
And so, again, going back to I'm excited about this Office of Economic Development, we are going to get out of each other's way. We're going to make sure that we start building again in this county, and it will put downward pressure on rents. It'll put downward pressure on residential tax bills. If we can expand the built environment, we can help spread out that property tax burden so that it can be bearable.
Patrick Hynes, thanks for being on Hibernian
Thanks
Radio.
for having me. I appreciate it.
Vote for Pat Hynes on when? March 17th?
March 17th, St. Patrick's Day.
We'll be back with more Hibernian Radio after these.